Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Curriculum Committee for September 9th, 2024. Mrs. Grigaitis, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Good evening, community. We are here for our first Curriculum Committee meeting of the year. Very exciting. We do have 5 items on our agenda this evening. We are going to first talk about our summer opportunities and requirements. We are also going to talk about some professional learning opportunities that were presented to our staff in August, as well as revisit our text selection process. We're going to review where we are with our curriculum cycle updates, and then we do have some conference requests this evening. So first and foremost, we were able to offer a few summer opportunities and ESY, which is a requirement. So we're going to review some of those with you. So Mr. Merck and Mr. Massetti are going to review First Summer Academy.
Thank you, everybody. So Mr. Merck and I will be.
Excuse me for 1 second. Was there any public comment on tonight's agenda?
Currently not at this time.
All right, thank you so much. Sorry about that.
No worries. So Mr. Merck and I will be talking about the Summer Academy programming that we have both at Plymouth Elementary and Colonial Middle School this past summer. So as we had indicated to the board last year, we decided to consolidate 2 separate programs and make them into one longer experience for students. It took place over 4 weeks, beginning in July and ending on August 2nd. So tonight we'll present some of the data. First though, I did want to just give a shout out to Annika Johnson and Nina Protowski, who were our 2 coordinators at both of our sites respectively. They did a remarkable job working with teachers, working with students, helping us get curricular materials together. They made it a very, very positive experience for all involved. So I do want to give them a special recognition there. In terms of our academy programming, I'll start with the elementary level. Typical day will be on the left-hand side, and then on the right, special guests that were invited for each of the days on that program. So a typical day in the elementary world would look like a morning meeting, shared reading experiences. There would be some skill group work, novel studies in the upper grades, small group work. Writing and research was integrated into every piece that they did throughout the day. Math skills practice, guest assembly, and a reader's theater. So a pretty robust schedule. And then in that, we had a number of special guests that did go to the elementary grades to help with students. BCA did excellent stuff show. They did it both at CMS and at PE. That was remarkable. The kids had a great time with that. We also had 2 of a kind, musical instrument tour. We had an author visit by Krista Smith. There was a virtual fossils in Antarctica exploration that students got to experience there. We did bring live yoga in for kids, which was also a wonderful experience. There was a virtual Clearwater Marine Aquarium visit. There was a martial arts exposition and brief training. And then there was a virtual Kennedy Center orchestral performance. Consistent with that, the musical instrument tour was actually done by Nina's daughter, who is a multi-instrumentalist. So she came in and did live demonstrations of all these instruments that lead up to that. To expose students to different types that we offer in the district. For the middle school programming, the typical day looked a little bit different. There we had our morning meeting and team building, which took place, the majority of which took place in the beginning of the experience to really build culture and community with the students that were invited. So we were very intentional about doing that, and our coordinator wanted to make that a mainstay of the program and revisited that every week. There was a shared reading experience, skill groups, writing and research, math skills, and then guest assembly, very much like the elementary level. As I had mentioned, the BCA also joined us at CMS, also had yoga. Different ones that I wanted to draw your attention to. We had Lockheed Martin come in to discuss opportunities in engineering, as well as do some demonstrations of some of their technology. So that was a really excellent opportunity for our kids in our larger space. We also had the Seeing Eye come in, which is a service dog project. So students got to learn how Seeing Eye dogs are trained, what the requirements are for that, and then how they help folks in the community. We also had some community outreach, the Barrendale Fire Department and the YMCA of Grove for anyone who joined us as well over those times. For our next slide, Mr. Merck will be reviewing some of the successes and some of the challenges that we interacted with during that 4-week time.
Right. So as with any change, you always have some highs and lows. Start off with the highs here. Just as Mr. Passetti said, we had 2 coordinators this year. It was the first time we had that. And Ann and Nina were very instrumental in keeping this running successfully. Great support for the teachers, great support for the students, and excellent communication with the community and the families at home. When we invited the students, it was based off data. So this year, anybody who was invited, we looked at critical information about them, and we said, okay, we'd like you to attend our program this summer. And that started way back in the spring, and we were able to keep, by the time it started, we did have full classes for all the staff that we hired. For staffing, yes, fully staffed. We did not have some of the problems that we've had in the past. We started back in January, and everybody that we hired from January on up to the spring were stayed on for the summer. Transportation, we did provide transportation to and from, and for food service, we provided breakfast, lunch, and snack. Some of the challenges that we experienced was just inconsistent student attendance, and with the, when you look at the academic growth, that was something that we saw that was impacted by the attendance rates. And then with staffing, majority of the staff was from outside the district, so it's difficult when you have teachers from outside the district coming in to work with work with the students with what they know and the culture of our building.
We did, just to add to that, we did offer 2 separate trainings available to teachers that were coming from out of district as well as in-house ones. We also did set them up with staff that we do have in CSD to make sure that they have an appropriate mentor, access to resources, things like that. We had excellent feedback from that group of folks, which was really good. Many had indicated they'd like to return for next year, so I thought that was a real positive thing as well. Under the successes, we neglected to mention, because Mr. McDonald is in the audience, security as well, so thank you so much for your assistance there. And facilities. Thank you to both of those teams for making sure that this was a successful program. And then in terms of attendance, just to add one additional piece to that, Mr. Burke had indicated that we use data to inform those decisions. In addition to data, we did look at programming in terms of what would be a best fit for a student. So for example, our multilingual learners of English were all invited to the program. We had a majority of those attend, which was fantastic. We also were very fortunate enough to have a bilingual individual at the elementary grades who could assist with the Spanish-speaking students. So that was a huge value add for all of us.
Question on the attendance. Was it inconsistent in that family vacations got in the way? Or was it more, it's summer, I don't feel like going today, the kid just didn't show up?
It's really difficult to probe for it. Very often we would ask it, very often we would say there was an opportunity. Yeah, I would say check EverDocs. There was a lot of, we had an opportunity to go away, yes, that came up. Occasionally students were sick. We did have a couple of students who reported that they had COVID, so obviously they were not able to attend. So I would say it was all over the board in terms of rationale for that.
Even though we had to hire externally, it also gives us a cadre of potential subs and long-term subs, which are so valuable throughout the school year. So I get it. Our full-time employees need a break, so we'd love them to continue, but the long-term effect is we gave people an opportunity to work in Colonial, which I think can lead to future long-term subs and eventually contracts.
And to piggyback, Mr. Carpenter, we did track the attendance overall. So we had 16 days offered in the summer academy, and we broke it down by 1st and 4th grade students that took place at Plymouth. We had 30% of those students attend all sessions. And then at the 5th through 8th grade level, we had about 12% attend all the sessions.
How many would you say got to 80% of the sessions?
We have all those numbers for
Okay,
you, and I'll
gotcha.
rely on Mr. Mark to break them down and get back to you tomorrow. Okay. But we do have all that data for us. Unless Ed knows that offhand.
75%.
Yeah.
I do have the answer to that right now.
Thank
So for Plymouth, 40% of the students entering grades, or students that were in grades 1 through 4, attend 75%, but less than 100%. And then 45% of the students in grades 5 to 8, same number. And then attended more than 50%, but less than 75. It got a little smaller, it was 14% for the elementary, 22% for the secondary.
So another summer opportunity we offered this year, after Conshohocken and Plymouth Elementary had surveyed some families, their families, they had determined that tutoring would be a better choice for them. So Maria's going to talk a little bit about the Title I tutoring that took place over the summer.
Yep, as with everything with Title I, family guardian and parent engagement is a huge piece. And so last year and previous years, Title I summer opportunity was not successful in terms of attendance. In some cases, we would have certain days where there would be 1 or 2 students per teacher. It really wasn't, one, cost effective, and we weren't getting our bang for our buck. So we did survey parents to see if they had any interest in having their student attend our summer program, and if they would be more open to having something that was virtual. And in fact, the parents did respond that they actually would have preferred for this particular opportunity to be virtual. And that, coupled with the fact that this year's Summer Academy for the district was also running through the month of July, we wanted to make sure that we weren't conflicting and having our programs running at the same time. So running it virtually allowed students to actually partake in the academy if they so choose to, in addition to getting tutoring with their Title I if they were in PE or CE. So that being said, we partnered with A+ Tutoring, who we also partnered with during the pandemic. They did our tutoring here at Colonial Middle School. And what it did allow was 2 different sessions for students per week. As soon as school was out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they were half-hour sessions, and students were identified by building staff based on their Linkit data scores. And so they were targeted in either math or ELA or both. And we use the program IXL because it is a predictive program that helps kids to measure their growth. And the tutors would work using IXL and also using the data that the buildings provided to help students in their areas of weakness. And so if you look at the data that is up there, you will see that we did invite 11 students from CE, and all 11 students did participate. We also had 50 students from PE invited, and we have about 27 of them actually had interest. What parents did like, the feedback that we got was that they actually could schedule their sessions at any point in time in the day that was flexible for them. So you could actually go down the shore if you wanted to and still have a virtual online tutoring session because you didn't actually have to physically come in. And so that was convenient for parents. We did see that attendance was fairly good, that we didn't see anyone not attend a session that they had signed up for. It's just about the number of frequencies of sessions. Teetered off in August, we did not have as much participation as we did in July. But the program ran as was. A+ Tutoring has recently been sold, so we probably won't be using them again in the future. But overall, we're happy with the program and that we were at least able to offer it to students. We were able to get participation. And what would be interesting is we're hoping to see the students that we did, where they're coming in now as they are taking their current Linkit assessments to see if they were at least able to maintain or if not possibly grow. So that's it.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is our I'm so sorry. No, it is not. It is ESY. Now the summer opportunity, but as Mrs. Burke reminded me, it is also a requirement. Mrs. Burke?
Thank you. For those of you who are unaware, extended school year, which we refer to as ESY, is individualized instructional programs that are provided beyond the length of the regular school year, only for students with disabilities. This is a mandated program by the state and also federal regulations. Eligibility is determined by the student's IEP team, and that's based on specific criteria that are defined in the special education regulations. It's considered to be necessary when the benefits that a student has gained during the school year will be significantly jeopardized if he or she is not provided with educational programming during the summer months. So during ESY programming, we work on targeted IEP goals that are determined at the IEP team meeting in order to maintain the skills that the students have learned during the year. While it would be lovely if the students, and hoped that the students would progress, the goal is to maintain so that when school resumes in the fall, students can hit the ground running. This year, we had the largest group we have ever had. There were 131 students who participated in ESY programming that was in person at Ridge Park Elementary. The program ran this year. It was a new setup. We ran Tuesdays through Thursdays from July 2nd through August 1st for 6 hours a day instead of 4 hours a day, for a total of 14 instructional days or 84 instructional hours. We were finding in the previous structure of Monday through Thursdays, we had a high absentee rate on Mondays. We also did speak with parents when we asked for feedback, and they were having difficulty procuring childcare for only a portion of the day. So we changed it to Tuesday through Thursday, and the feedback was really extremely positive, and we did see an increase in attendance. So we will most likely be maintaining that structure in upcoming years that we have this. The elementary ESY program consisted of 113 students in grades K through 5. The focus of instruction was academics, speech and language, and maintaining behavioral momentum throughout the school day. Data collection revealed that 100% of the students in K-5 maintained or showed improvement in at least one of their targeted IEP goals, and 86% maintained or showed improvement in the majority of their targeted goals. The secondary ESY program consisted of, I think it was 18 students. Grades 6 through age 22 or 21. The focus of instruction included academics, daily living skills, social skills, and transition to adult life skills. And data revealed that 100% of the students showed improvement in at least one of their targeted goals, and 86% maintained improvement in the majority of their IEP goals. Any questions about that?
Karen, from the 131 students who attended, how many actually were qualified?
They were all qualified.
No, I meant were there more that were qualified that just didn't participate?
I think both. There were more who qualified because we're seeing an increase in the number of students who do qualify, and who do have some really specific needs and really need to have that consistency of summer programming.
And do we have data as to why those students didn't participate?
Pardon me?
Do we have data as to why those students did not participate?
Some parents opted for their kids to have breaks. Some parents opted for their children to go to camp rather than a school program. And there are some specialized camps, but we do not fund that. So, I think that there are summers that, families just want to be together, and a lot of the families go down the shore.
I will say I came to the last day when all the families were invited and, to see the kids, and they had their little water ice party. It was nice to see the families being included, sort of to celebrate the end of the program. And the feedback I was hearing from parents was very positive, so thank you guys. I think the parents felt it was nice to be included in that, final day with them.
We tried to make it fun. I mean, it's difficult for many of our kids. Some of the learning that they do is very challenging for them. But we try to make it fun at the same time by having themes, having guests. So it's a fun time as well.
And I will say a shout out to all your principals too, because they all were also there, and for the kids to see them, I mean, that was like very nice,
That's greatly appreciated, and you're welcome to stop by anytime.
They seemed very excited to see current principals and former ones too, so yeah, it was nice.
Any questions? All yours.
Okay, now I'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the professional learning opportunities that we had available for our staff in August. But first, we're going to ask everybody to revisit our mission and our vision, because again, this is the why of everything we do. How do we support our students in becoming the mission and the vision of the district, and what skills, character traits, attributes? We have reviewed this as well. So another welcome repeat is going to be looking at the Colonial School District Portrait of a Graduate. So these are the capabilities, the qualities that we strive to have in all of our Colonial School District graduates, and what we want them all to become. So how do we make sure that they all become this? We provide our teachers and our staff with professional learning so that they are able to get our students to where they want to be. Some of the district-wide focuses that we are going to talk about this evening are that making teaching and learning visible. We're also going to talk about belonging and inclusion, and then we're also going to talk about some content area highlights, all of which took place those 3 full days that we had for our teachers for professional learning this year. So the focus areas have remained consistent for the past couple of years, and this will also be the focus for this year because of our comprehensive planning. So when you make your comprehensive plan, you have your strategies, you have your goals, and then you have your professional learning that is going to get us where we need to be for those goals. So making teaching and learning visible consists really of clarity, and you have heard us talk about clarity before. So we worked with our teachers and reminded them the importance of identifying those learning intentions and the success criteria for our students and clearly communicating to these to the students. The ultimate goal is for students to own their own learning. So we continue to work on clarity and give them more strategies to embed that in everything that they do. SGI is also up here, small group instruction. Small group instruction has always been a mainstay in our elementary classrooms. We are focused again on having our students own their own learning, and it has been a goal to have that more available in our secondary schools as well. So much of the training was focused on our secondaries to make sure that all students' needs are met. Again, going back to that mission, all students. So how do we best make sure that we're meeting all of their needs? With small group instruction. We also reviewed some tools that are new to us this year provided by Linkit, our data warehouse, and they do have the ability to help our secondary teachers really plan those small groups with all different data sources. So we were happy to have that. And then finally, we focused on feedback for teachers, which we know is very important. So we worked with our administrators and our teachers and really discussed the point of comprehensive classroom observations. And that is to develop our teachers further and further. We have a continuous improvement mindset for our students, and we need to also embrace that for ourselves. So how do we work collaboratively with our teachers and our administrators to hone in on what I think I need to do better in so that ultimately that will increase our student success. Melissa is going to share a little bit about our Belonging and Inclusion Initiative.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Sure.
And good evening to the board, our staff, and community. I want to start by saying that CRSE was introduced by the Pennsylvania Department of Education during the 2022 school year. However, the expectation was that school districts across the Commonwealth implement these competencies through professional development and induction. And we have done so since that expectation has been rolled out. With that, we have established our EIB building leadership teams. They have been professionally developed, or should I say, they have explored professional learning opportunities throughout the school year and have facilitated at their respective buildings turnaround training. That has happened throughout the school year. We have also explored opportunities to bring in people who help develop these competencies. So we had a parent, Dr. Juliet Kersey, come in also for the best practices fair and facilitate training during our best practices fair. We also have video recordings of each competency that was shared every month through our communications department. And with that, there were videos that were shared to unpack each competency. What we're doing for this upcoming school year is taking it a step further. And we're doing that through anchoring these competencies through the book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain by Zaretta Hammond.
And what we're doing as an EIB building leadership team is exploring this book and layering the competencies that we have already been exploring district-wide. And what this does is it helps our teachers, it helps our staff. Again, everyone receives the Colonial Cultural Connections. It helps us further expand our lens around equity, inclusion, and belonging. So we are really excited to continue to further explore that. And as Rosemarie just stated, we take heed to the feedback that we receive through our surveys after professional learning opportunities. And we have absolutely heard the voices of our teachers and our staff, and they want to explore more opportunities around self-care. We know that through this pandemic that teachers, people, parents, we have all felt the burden of, just exploring and trying to navigate these times. So we are also supporting our teachers in that way. So we are anchoring our competencies and furthering the EIB initiative at the Colonial School District and anchoring it in the book through Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Isabella Hammond.
And then finally, Ed, Maria, and Joe are going to give us some
Question.
There's a question. Sorry, can you highlight one more time? CRSE is, I forget what it stands for.
Yes. CRSE,
Culturally
Culturally Relevant and Sustaining Education.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And now we're content area highlights.
All right, I'll go first. So two of the areas I'd like to highlight. One is the building thinking classrooms. Last spring, I took 3 teachers, Amanda Vinchesky from Plymouth White Marsh High School, Dan Bennett from Colonial Middle School, and Jared Kruganoff from Colonial Elementary School to a session about building thinking classrooms with the author of the book, if you ever had a chance to see the book. His name's Peter Liljegdal. If you see the spell, you'll understand why I had trouble pronouncing it. But that was an incredible session. It's so incredible. Those 3 teachers said, we want to turn this around for the whole district. So then we made plans to include that as one of our sessions for all teachers that teach math in grades 4 through 12. There is an elementary version coming out this school year that we will hopefully get some teachers to attend as well and offer that training at some point in the future. But that was what one teacher said was one of the best math professional development sessions that he attended, so it was great. And then there was a state required training for health and PE teachers. It was an opioid instruction training as part of Act 55. It's a required training. This training only needs to occur once, and so we were able to conduct that training this school year. Moving forward, the only time we have to provide that training is if we have a new health and phys ed teacher. Sure.
Well, we continued with our work in STEELS as we started last year. And in particular, our focus is at the secondary level right now. There are some shifts that are happening at the elementary level that we're going to address through invite for me to PLCs. That is because the PSSA this year is shifting from 4th grade to 5th grade. So we have some new things to go through there with 5th grade teachers. At the secondary level, both at middle school and high school, Dr. Brett Criswell from Westchester University, you might recall him attending one of our curriculum committee at the board meetings last year, came back and worked with us in working in those 3 dimensions of science learning. And so he actually provided us a template to work through as we go through our lessons and design them to make sure that they are making sure we're pulling all of those 3 dimensions in. And then actually a process for us to review how it went and analyze it and then work back in PLT when we come back to reconvene and discuss as colleagues. So that was a great opportunity, and we are continuing the work independently as we go through our department meetings for the year, both at high school and middle school, and also at our upcoming next PD in November we've already planned for.
All right, the last component on there was structural literacy. For the K through 5 teams, that was a reinforcement and re-exploration of some concepts that we reviewed in February, and kind of expanding that to elicit some feedback from staff in terms of additional needs for a small group instruction related to that. We'll talk more about structural literacy in a future CCLB meeting to go into some of the research and some of what we're working with. But for the moment, one of the other things that we're working on with structured literacy is ensuring that all of our certificated staff, per PDE requirements, are receiving training, at least in a knowledge-based course. So they do it by certification, not by where you currently teach. So if you're a K-12 teacher, you teach at the high school, but you happen to have a 4 through 6 certification for elementary, you would also have to receive training as well, even if your position is different. So that's what we're currently working on at this time.
I'd like to circle back real quick, Mr. With the opioid training, I know you said that you only needed to do it the one time. So let's just say you have somebody who's been in the district for 10 years. Like, wouldn't it, like, a refresher? Is it, I mean, I'm saying, I think what you're saying is it's mandatory once, but does it seem feasible to see some type of refresher, even if it's just, touching the information just one more time?
So one of the things that we do that through our curriculum,
Okay.
especially when we go through the curriculum cycle. And one of the things we refer to for the curriculum cycle are our data, the PAYS data, and data that's from the assessments that the students take through the county. So we work with getting those results and looking to see, okay, do we need to make any shifts in our instruction? Do we need to, enhance the instruction? And when we're looking at those types of things, that's where teachers are staying up to speed on, new developments with opioid.
So a lot of this stuff I don't like. I mean, I don't have teaching as a background, but I know it seems like if what I'm hearing you say is correct, it's like, okay, so the students do some type of survey information or do something, and then the state or the county pulls information from that.
That's how we get resources from the county. That's how they fund resources from the PAYS survey. We revisit those topics throughout the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So their first exposure is not the only exposure.
Right.
We spiral back again in high school through the health curriculum, and then we have care teams at every school. So if we have students who are experiencing situations with opioids or any other type of situation, the care teams step in and help out. So there's definitely repeated ways.
Right.
To
I'm specifically talking about the training. You mentioned that only if you hire a new health or physical ed. And so what I'm saying is that if new information comes out and that person doesn't have that new information, and where I got lost was that, like, the kids clearly don't know everything about opioids. So if this thing went from that, what their information was, to kind of tell you if you need to add things in, that's why I was kind of.
If the state did update anything, they would require us to do that training more often, and the professional learning time, PLTs,
Right.
before that pacing comes out is when the teachers all sit there and go through again.
That's where
I have to see.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask a theoretical question? Okay.
No, go ahead.
What percentage of the PLT do you think is state mandated versus the district initiative, things teachers are passionate about?
So the PD, and I forget when we did discuss it, maybe last spring we talked about that, because we talked about the virtual option that we'll be offering your teachers. Without a doubt, the state required professional developments have increased over the years, exponentially. So, but as Mr. Mark explained, sometimes it's, you must do this 3-hour training for just your health and PE teachers. Mr. Passetti in the English Language Arts Department had a few mandatory trainings from ADL. We have taken the ones that all of our staff are required to do, the 4 hours, and they will all be completing them on November 27th as a flex day if they get them finished. So yes, they have increased exponentially over the years. So we're trying more creative ways to allow our teachers to participate in those trainings. Most of the time, they're virtual, right, Mr. McDonald? So they cover all aspects.
So that sort of leads into my follow-up. In an ideal world where you're not bound by contracts and all the summer vacations, et cetera, would having 3 straight days of professional development right before the teachers get back, is that in your ideal way of getting that content to them? Or in theory, with something like optional, flexible trainings over the summer, so they've got more time to think and plan for the year as they're developing? I realize it's not possible.
It's a formula, right? It's a formula. So you're required to have 180 days of instruction. You're required to have 990 hours of instruction. You're required to do mandatory trainings, which we understand our requirement. But then, so how many, and then you have holidays, and then, so how many professional learning days do you want to cram into all of that? And then be done by approximately June 15th.
Right.
It's formulaic. Like, you just can't squeeze any more hours of the day. And it just seems to me, it's very, nobody disputes the value of the required trainings. But it just seems very convenient to run it through the schools, to run it through here. And so, we don't want to sacrifice any more instructional time. We're sitting at about 1,032 hours per school. So we can give up a few more times, but those are real hours to families who have parents and guardians who are hourly employees that rely us on being in school rather than having a professional learning day. So it really becomes formulaic.
We typically don't use our August days. Again, that's why we're offering the flex day in November. But however, the offs, like the health and PE teachers, they need it as opioid training, so they do have flexibility in their schedule.
I have a question, but mine is back to the making teaching and learning visible. I wasn't fast enough before we moved on, so sorry to go backwards. My question was on the observation that you mentioned. Does that include feedback on written work such as syllabi and things of that nature as well?
That specifically is talking about the mandated Act 13 comprehensive classroom observations and walkthroughs on the instructional practices of our teachers.
Okay. But so non-required, do we do any feedback and or coaching regarding syllabus?
Our principals work with our teachers that have syllabus. Yes, syllabi.
I was like, was it syllabus?
Yeah, Maria usually calls us out on the Latin. Yeah. So yes. Now, each year, we also give you a brief update on this as well as our teachers. And it's not an update, it's basically a reminder of our practices and policies that guide our text selections, whether they are in the classroom for our instructional materials or our independent libraries. Jim?
All right, thank you. So the first slide here, just as a reminder, we do, again, as Mrs. Gervais indicated, send this out to our administrative teams and review this with our departments, just so we're all on the same page. We have two separate policies governing two separate acquisitions of materials. The first one is for classroom instruction, that's policy 108. That is the process you're all familiar with here, which is how we go about finding core instructional resources. The second policy is 109, that's resource materials for school libraries in particular. And that covers physical, digital, audio, text, media, databases, software, and instructional materials. All of those adhere to the principles of the American Library Association's freedom to read provisions. So these are the two major policies that govern that. Of particular interest on the next slide is the resource selection process for independent libraries. This is a reminder that we go through again with our departments and administrative teams routinely, just to ensure that we are going through appropriate processes for all the texts that we have housed in our classrooms. So we do have recommendations for classroom teachers cultivating those independent libraries K through 12, and that they will honor the collection, maintenance, and weeding parameters, as they're called. Weeding is basically going through books and taking ones that are not in circulation anymore, maybe outdated, and replacing them with new texts. And that again is by the ALA. What we also want to make sure of is that classroom libraries do have 3 readers on each of those texts. So our standard process is typically I'm one of the readers on that, or an administrator, just to make sure that we can all agree this is one we may want to supply for students that is reflective of our community's values and eventually for an independent reading opportunity, and that is K through 12. Collections are cultivated by classroom teachers and may involve the coordination and consultation with us, which is great because again, we get a good balance on what folks are being offered in the classroom spaces. So we always go over this every year just to make sure, if folks pick things up from a yard sale and they want to put those on their library stacks in their classroom, that there's an appropriate process followed for those to make sure that they're vetted.
So if you don't mind asking, what is that process if they come back with, or like I've donated tons of books to the schools, and so now because it's been a long time, but if someone were to donate books, what is that process?
And we do frequently, Mrs. Epstein, receive donations from charitable organizations, yourself, others. What we do with that is we funnel those donations typically through our librarians at those sites. So if you had decided to do a specific donation to CMS, we make sure that we're meeting with the librarian to go through those so we can appropriately catalog and inventory if they're going to be for our library stacks. If they're for classroom independent work, we still try and do that process just to make sure, again, if there's a duplicate of a text that we feel would be very valuable for the community, we want to make sure that that's available to all students and not just necessarily in that classroom. Teachers are free to exercise their discretion, but they are familiar with the process for what that should look like.
How much, so speaking of the classroom libraries, like, how much of a classroom's library is funded by the school or the PTO versus funded by the teacher?
That's a good question. It's difficult to answer that latter question, how much, I know that, myself as a teacher, I have spent a good deal of money cultivating my own library in my English classroom. We do have a number of teachers that do that. What we do supply funding for at the district level is new classrooms are equipped with a classroom library. So that's a collection that we have vetted way in the past, K through 12, to say, here you go, welcome to your class, here's 100 books. And you can keep those in your classroom.
I thought you were going to follow up on this, but so if I as a parent donate 40 copies of a book and I think it's great, and then the readers read through it and decide it's not great, how does that track, and how does the parent follow up? Like, oh, I gave all these books, and they're asking their kid, and they're like, I never saw it. So I'm wondering, how does that work?
Hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Also, if the book is good, we do have a rubric through the ALA that we go through that has certain metrics and criteria. It's basically a rubric that says, this is a value for this particular grade level. Very often we can cross-reference a lot. There hasn't been a book that has been donated in recent memory that we've not been able to cross-reference with our library stacks already. And then when that comes up, we do have all those housed in Destiny, which is our library catalog. That cross-references Kirkus reviews, which is vetted reviews from a number of different outlets. Common Sense Media is part of that, so that's all filtered into that as well. Where we track that is we do have a spreadsheet that is housed at each department level that has a list of those texts, and then we just keep an ongoing list. So at department meetings, if someone raises, Mr. Winchester had, donated this book, it's fantastic. Anybody else want to read it? We all have that as a visual during our meeting. We go ahead and read it and go through the process.
I thank you for that information. I just wanted to make sure, because obviously what books are being read in schools is a major topic. And for people to know how the selection process goes and who they speak to is important.
And I have
Which
another
is why
question.
we begin each year with that process, and as Joe explained, to let all the teachers know, typically when we have parents donate books, they go to the teacher first.
Yeah.
And say, this is what we'd like to do, and then the teacher is able to direct them to the process and the policy.
Awesome.
Question on the rubric that you mentioned, so does that rubric take into consideration the CRC competencies?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, no offense to the CRSE companies, it predates the CRSE competencies formally, but all of those considerations are in there. Are they reflective of our community's values, of underrepresented populations, diverse tax, all of those things? Yes, those are included.
If a parent is uncomfortable with the text, there are very few scenarios where the school district is mandating they read a text that they're uncomfortable with. It may be offered by a classroom library or maybe a choice for a literary circle, but we're not forcing them to read tough, difficult things if that's against their beliefs or any of those things. That we give lots of choices for the level that they're reading at, in addition to being exposed to new ideas, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Patrick. That is a self-selected process on behalf of the student. Very often teachers, my consultation to them is work with the parents. If there's something that a student is particularly fond of, the genre, particular author, things of that nature, work to kind of guide that student in that direction and maybe expand beyond that, but it's always done in consultation with the parent.
Okay, agenda item number 4. Again, we start each year just giving you a brief update. We're not going to read the entire slides to you, but we're going to give you a brief update from each of our content areas so you are aware of where we are in our curriculum cycle. And this helps you better understand any sort of professional learning we may need to go along with these cycle updates, as well as any budgetary implications. So I think Mr. Merck starts first.
So for math, health, and PE music, in grades K to 5, we have grades K to 3 math will explore possible resources, preferably the ones that can back math from what grade 4 selected this past school year. As you're aware from the last curriculum board meeting, grade 4 started a new resource, which they are enjoying very much and very eager to keep moving with that this school year. Grade 5 will be trained on the new resource in the spring. For grade 6 through 8 math, we have our 8th grade teachers continuing with the resource they've been looking at for the past 2 years. The plan for grade 6 and 7 will be to team up with grade 8 teachers to visit lessons and investigate that resource more for their content. And then looking forward, the high school will start the research process into resources going into next school year. And then last, all grades K-12 health and PE and music teachers, they're creating what are called long-term transfer goals and vertical progression of skills. The state provides those for our other cores like math, English, science, and social studies. They do not really provide those for other areas. So we're looking to look at how they're structured for those other core areas and bring them into these two courses, these two content areas, health and PE and music. So that process is starting to roll right now. Any questions?
With the music, excuse me, long-term transfer goals, so things outside of the classroom, but more like the orchestras and the bands, and they start at 4th grade and things like that, and the dynamics of, the different grade levels as they progress through that music program. Are we looking into, I know we're looking into ways to kind of enhance getting more kids through that program. Is that part of this discussion too, or is it just, this is just the classroom music?
So it's part of building the program from the bottom up and keeping the instruction and skills that students need to maintain consistent and not organically, gets bigger as the students come up through the program. So, what they'll see in 4th and 5th grade, they'll take that set of core goals and bring that up with them up to 12th grade, but just expand as the what's required of the students expand.
And I'll ask my
Does that
question.
make sense?
I think it's
No, it's
more,
like-
Chris, I think it's more, while it's connected to the curriculum cycle, it's more part of our observation and evaluation model. To your question.
I know we can have other discussions, but I have some ideas on how to kind of it just doesn't, how do I put it? There are some ways that we could, in a lens, look at connecting those outside groups better. And anyway, we can talk about that.
Yeah, like we just said, goal setting meetings and beginning of the year, pre-evaluation meetings with all departments, including the music department. We talked about some of those things. But anything we can do to enhance it, we'll certainly offer and listen.
Get my list.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask basically some of my questions to my last one in this space is around the CRC and how those competencies will be incorporated in the PE and music space. Because I feel like when we talk about music a lot, we talk about orchestra band, but music goes beyond those, in chorus, beyond those specific areas. So there's writing, right? There's all these, and then there's different genres. So just asking if that, making sure that that is also being accommodated since we're in the process of developing that.
Well, this past summer, members from the EIB building leadership team met, and we met throughout the summer, and there was some curriculum writing. And what we did was we took each competency and then we built out resources that align with each competency that connect the various content areas district-wide.
Okay, thank you.
Maria, I think, yeah.
Okay, so in terms of K-5, and I should have differentiated this on the slide, but this includes science as well as instructional technology. But we are fully aligned to STEELS. That was the work that we've done over the past 2 years. So we will not see that again for the curriculum cycle, hopefully for another couple of years. 6 through 8, we did quite a bit of work last year, more so informing and educating the teachers on what phenomenal science instruction was and how we try to use that as an equalizer for students when they don't have all the same backgrounds and experiences, so that we can allow them to engage and access the curriculum in a way that allows their true inquiry without giving certain students an upper hand, as well as introducing three-dimensional science learning. So this year at the middle school, our focus is really going to be also on how we're assessing students, both formatively and summatively, looking at the types of questions that we're asking and actually reconfiguring our local assessments that we've created so that they are more of a higher level question and there's more application and less recall. So we're working with Linkit to do that, as well as looking at specific rubrics from next generation science standards. And teachers have hit the ground running as well, offering benchmark assessments in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade as opposed to just 8th, with what we've done previously. So we'll have some updates on that. We are also focusing here in the middle school, not just in science, but also in our EDI departments, particularly in tech ed and computer science, and looking to update those areas because it has been quite a while. And of course, when technology is involved, we want to make sure that we are using the most current and the most applicable so students are getting real world experience. So that is one of our areas of focus this year. In 9 through 12, you might remember that, of course, we started curriculum writing in cycle 1 in science, but we focused last year primarily on chemistry and physics. This year, we're going to be focusing more on biology. And the reason part of that is fiscally, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of resources that are needed for both areas, and doing the whole entire high school at one time really just is not fiscally responsible. So we did separate that. So our major focus this year for stage 1 would be on biology. And you'll see that physics and chemistry, we implemented the new resources, so they will be in stage 2. We also are going to focus on some of our elective areas that align to those specific content areas. And we are taking a look as well at EDI, in particular in computer science and technology education. So we're doing some cross-articulation with 6 through 8 and 9 through 12 as we work through that stage 1. Looking forward, as I mentioned a little bit ago, we are having some changing in our science testing. So the shift from 4th to 5th. So all of those kids that were tested last year are getting tested again, unfortunately. So a little bit of a test fatigue, but there will be field tests this year. So we'll be working with teachers to try to plan for that. My computer just died. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to read off of the screen. I can do that too. We're continuing to work with Dr. Criswell as we go through some of the modules I mentioned before. And we're using a couple different resources in order to evaluate for our core materials, especially in biology, but also 6 through 8. And so in EDI in particular and tech ed, project-based learning is our focus. We're looking to update those particular opportunities that we provide to students to make sure that they are as relevant and real world as possible.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I understand that the 5th graders will take it as a field test. Are the 4th graders still taking it?
No.
So
This year it's done. Yeah, and it's not the whole test that's a field test. It's specific questions that are field questions within the test.
Okay.
And the state has not provided a great deal of information. To be truthful, I don't even know if last year counts, if this year counts. I don't know how that works. I have a couple emails in and I have yet to get a response. So once I know, we'll share that with you.
Thank you. I know I feel like it's a little vague right now.
Yeah.
The other quick question is around our gifted program, our gifted and talented program. I'm just curious around and this could be anyone to answer this question, but I'm just curious around what curriculum we use and what that process looks like for our gifted students.
Well, in terms of science, there is no specific gifted
Not necessarily for science,
Yeah.
it's more of a broader question. Yeah.
The gifted program in general.
Yeah.
For the most part, our kids' needs in the gifted program have been met through the curriculum. For those kids who exceed the curriculum that we offer, we do provide dual enrollment for students, so they can. But for the most part, our kids through the AP classes can really achieve a great deal in sciences.
So there's no separate curriculum that we use for gifted with the gifted.
With the high school.
Yeah, we're talking about all levels, K to 12. Yeah, at the elementary level, it's accelerated learning. We have gifted support teachers that do push in as well as sometimes pull out for some projects.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, it's individualized through the students.
I don't know if it still is the case, but when a student goes from the 8th grade to the high school, the parents, there's like a thing where the parents can opt out of the GIE piece in loop because of.
They can always opt
Yeah.
But that's like one where it's like a standard, like, here's.
We
here's
have
a thing.
found that most of the students' needs, as they reach the secondary level, have been able to be met through the curriculum and through the opportunity for advancement through the curriculum. The one area I think where we're seeing kids be accelerated quicker than others is maybe in the area of math. And we do have some students who are very young who go to the high school for math and then become dual enrolled.
Thank you.
And finally, ELA Social Studies World Languages.
Okay, so the current status for K through 5, we're continuing our shift to structured literacy at that level. Benchmark and foundations, grades K through 3 are fully implemented now as part of our core. And this year, grades 4 through 5 has the refreshed version of Wonders. It's not a new resource, but it is the refreshed version that includes some additional writing components. Grades 6 through 12, we're going to train remaining certificated staff in structured literacy knowledge base. Grades 6 through 8 social studies are going to be conducting a gap analysis as part of their stage 1 to do significant work in that area. Grades 8 through 12, English is going to be working on vertical articulation. So basically, how do we backwards map to make sure that all the standards are met and our content is cohesive among those? Grades 9 through 12, social studies, this is the first year of our sequence change for all of our students. So as I had mentioned last year, part of that sequence change is 9th grade is now world history for folks instead of 2 years of American history, 8th and 9th. So that shift has occurred. Teachers are hitting the ground running with that change. World Languages is currently leveraging leading with culture as part of their instructional strategy, as part of their core. It deals with a lot of language immersion and a lot of work with students in oral communication, which has seen significant gains over the past couple of years. Looking forward, 6th through 8 social studies will coordinate with the English department at CMS to bolster literacy across disciplines, ensuring that writing is a mainstay between those two departments and beyond. Implementing sound walls in K-3 classrooms, it's ongoing. I coordinated a meeting this morning with one of the elementary schools, Conshohocken. Went very well, so we're continuing that work as we build out. Implementing instructional best practices for multilingual learners of English, along with leadership teams. Melissa and I are working with that in partnership with Temple University's LIFE program. And then the continued evaluation and additions of core and supplementary readings K through 12 as part of that curriculum review process.
I have another question that's sort of not quite odd, but where do we currently work on cursive writing for the kids?
Good question. So cursive
Well,
writing
I thought you were gonna say what?
I use cursive writing.
Can you sign for packages from anybody? You gotta use your finger to.
It's the only reason I have a library card. So for cursive, 3rd grade foundations is part of our core now. We had implemented it last year. That's where they learn their left and right slant. They do the letter formation. So all students are exposed to that as part of their core in 3rd grade.
Okay, so here's my next question. How often do we revisit being able to read cursive writing? Because if they're not writing it, so for example,
When do we see cursive writing?
huh?
When do we see cursive writing?
Okay, my mom used to send the kids handwritten birthday cards.
Very nice.
And I had several of my high schoolers ask me to read them to them. Now, these are kids who are like AP, and they didn't know how to read it. So I'm just curious because you may not have to write anything about your signature, but there are times when you might have to read it, and it does look like Greek to those kids.
So what I can say in terms of formal direct instruction, I would have to investigate that a little bit more. What I can say is that
We don't teach how to read cursive. It's a great point, Chris.
Yes, right.
We can look at it,
I'm
but
sure
I don't
it's
believe it's
AI,
anything.
and get a picture of that.
well, I will say as a general practice, we do
Right.
ensure
It's
that
going by the way.
when we're working with primary source documents like the Declaration of Independence, for example, students always have a typewritten version as well as the cursive, so they can see both versions of that. But to say that we're doing explicit instruction outside of foundations and letter formation for cursive reading, that is not something that we're directly doing.
And I can say, I had 2 who went to elementary school in this district, and my youngest did not. And they can read cursive, she cannot, because she didn't learn writing or reading, because she came out of Philly. Well, not because she came out of Philly, but she came out of Philly School, no offense. And she was able to, she's not able to, she, all the time, she's like, I don't, like my handwriting, because I go back and forth in the same writing between cursive and print, and she doesn't understand what I'm writing, so. And I'm saying that to say, kind of kudos to this district, that I do have students who can do it.
Just a quick comment around, thank you for the structured literacy updates. I know we had this discussion briefly over email. I believe that the state didn't pass anything specific to structured literacy at the moment, but it's definitely, coming or on the horizon. Could you, provide a little more clarity for all of us around sound walls, and what they are and what the shift is and why that's important? I think it's just something important to note.
Certainly, I can briefly note it here, I believe
I was
Mrs.
just
Burgett.
gonna say, next
We're gonna
month
do
is
another
batch.
structured literacy
Yep.
training,
Pause
if you
there.
want to, or if you're just dying to know right now, we can.
No, that's
share
fine.
that.
I'm aware. I just think it's an
Sure.
important
Oh, yeah.
aspect to it. So if we're gonna do it later, that's great.
So that was a request that we had from the board for structured literacy, and that will definitely be a component of it.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions about? All right, so our final thing on our agenda are some conference requests. And we just spoke about our dual enrollment courses. So our first two requests are for 2 teachers at the high school. They are required to go to University of Pittsburgh so that we can maintain some dual enrollment status with the honors career and financial management. So they are the first 2. Then the last 4 conference requests are all for the same conference, which is the NCTE, National Conference of Teaching English. And that is in Boston, Massachusetts this year. The 4 teachers are from this building, the middle school. They are presenting at the conference about reading conferences and the work that they did with Penny Kittle, that PD that they worked through in 22-23 and then implemented last year. So they will be presenting at that conference.
Looks a little low for Boston.
We are, excuse me?
I said it looks a little low for Boston.
Oh, well, they are estimates. We're hoping that they're close.
So just a quick question, if they're presenting, do they get a discount on lodging?
Typically, they used to do that in conferences. We're not seeing so much of that anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I may have asked this question before, but for like conferences, especially the annual conferences, do we alternate who attends so that it's not the same people?
Perfect timing. So yes, we did just talk about this process with our administrators as well as our supervisors, that we do value conferences. There's some script for you. Can you read that? Or cursive?
I know how to read cursive.
Yeah.
And
I know, take
not a
it.
chance.
But Ms. Clint, yes, we have revisited this summer, the process for applying for conferences. We do value them as a professional learning opportunity, but we do want to expose many of our teachers and not just the same ones year after year. So yes, that will be one of our practices moving forward.
Thank you.
Sure. And that is it for us, unless you have any final questions.
Whoever started again.
Okay. Is there any public comment this evening?
Surely none at this time.
Any other board comments? All right, thank you guys all so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And we'll move into community relations. Would you like to open us up?
Sure. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the September CSRL. SW.
Our first.
Okay. To our meeting. And I'm gonna turn it over to Karen.
Any public comment?
Oh, is there any public comment?
Surely none at this time.
Okay. All right, so then I will turn it over to Karen.
All right, thank you. There are 4 items on our agenda this evening. School safety and security. A glimpse, believe it or not, into our school calendar for next school year. Out-of-state college fair, and a couple policies for review.
We did ask, we asked Mr. McDonald to come forward as our head of safety and security in light of the tragic events last week in Georgia, to just provide our public and the board some reminders of the multiple layers we have to keep our students and staff safe. Obviously, Tim cannot share everything that's in our plans because we want some of it to be confidential, but it is shared with our 3 local police departments, who we have a great relationship with. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about safety and security because it's obviously right in my wheelhouse. I haven't done it for the last several decades, so it's a good opportunity to just review a couple things. And Dr. Christian kind of hit on it to begin with. What's important to know about all the safety and security in the district is all of the technology that we use, the policies and procedures that we've drawn upon, they're not created in a vacuum. They're all vetted through our local law enforcement partners, through the Montgomery County Department of Emergency Services and their school safety coordinator, through the district attorney's office, through other school districts, and of course internally. And we do that with everything that we put into play here in the school district for obvious reasons. They're all imperative and important and part of our whole cohesive layered approach to safety and security. And a big part of that, and there's some core elements to what we do. You have of course, your physical safety and security, your technology pieces. You have your site and building designs, which we alter when we can alter or contribute to. In the case of modifications to CES, we contribute to that from a safety and security department, so that moving forward, we're adding technology that we can add at this point and don't have to worry about adding later. Of course, there's people and personnel, there's policies and procedures, and then there's training and drills and things like that that are all part and parcel to the technology and the policies and procedures that we use. And all of that systems-based approach is what leads to our overall layered security plan, which Dr. Christian referenced. So when you talk about safety and security in the district, it is a layered plan, and it's layered by design. And really it's because that way it helps prevent any single point of failure. So that if we have a problem in one area, there's something else in our layer that will pick up for that slack that may have occurred. So that's how we've gotten to this layered approach. So when you talk about that layered approach, of course, you're working from the outside in. When you're outside of our buildings, you're talking about our personnel, both ours and our security guards and our staff, as well as law enforcement who visit our schools on a daily basis and help us to maintain our level of security. Naturally, you have your basic things like geographic bushes, trees, things like that, and then of course lights. And then we add the next components. We add the cameras to our buildings. And a big part of our cameras is our zero-eyes artificial intelligence, which helps us to identify any type of a firearm that may be on approach to our building. So that working with our cameras, working with our personnel who are monitoring our cameras, that's that outer layer of security that will hopefully help us in those most serious conditions gather that information and allow us to add a little bit of time to protecting staff and students that are inside. So that's our outer layer. And then as you move into your next inner layer, when you get closer to your building, you're talking about your access controls, your key fobs, our electronic it's called S2, our key fob system. That is a proprietary system that we control, we maintain who has access, when they have access, the times of the day, the holidays, weekends, night times, all of that is controlled through the district itself. So that way we can make sure we know who and when are entering our buildings. And we have the capability to go back and check and see who entered, what time did they enter, where did they enter, why were they in our building. So we have that capability through that level of technology. Of course, you have your regular good old-fashioned key and locking doors. We have that in place, obviously. We have police departments, police officers who wander our buildings and talk to the security guards and staff and our students to develop those relationships between law enforcement and our staff and students. And then we have cameras inside our buildings, just like we have outside the building. Also, with that artificial intelligence of zero eyes that helps us to identify firearms and things of that nature. Then we add things on top of that. We obviously have all locked doors. We have our policies where all classroom doors have to remain locked. Then we add our technology and we add our night lock, which is basically a deadbolt on the inside of all the classroom doors. So we have that technology so that if there's a slip up and a door's not locked in an emergency or a lockdown, we have that next level of technology that's in play that picks up if something else is missed. So that again, going into that layered approach. And then as you get closer and tighter into our building, You have things like Raptor, where we vet our visitors to our building. So we run them all through Raptor. They have tags that show us who's in the building. We know where they are. We know what they're there for. And then, of course, again, the security guards, the night locks, the keys, the locks, cameras. We have our Alert Us 911 button, which is a button that's located strategically in the building so that in the event of emergency, you push the button, immediately notifies the 911 dispatch center, who immediately sends law enforcement to wherever that button was activated from. It's a GPS kind of based button, so that when it goes off and it alerts the 911 center, they immediately know what law enforcement agencies to call, and then they send them to that school that's having that particular problem. And then, of course, you have your Raptor, as we talked about, and we have all our policies and procedures that address our lockdown drills, our holds, our lockouts, our bad weather situations, all those steps and processes that are drilled into both staff and students to tell them this is how we respond to this, this is how we respond to that. And I can tell you over the dozen years that I've been in the district, those policies and those drills have taken hold. Because when we have our drills, we invite law enforcement in to visit us. We invite the school safety coordinator for the district attorney's office to come in and visit us. And regularly we get patted on the back, if you will, saying you guys are obviously doing things the right way, because teachers have taken to what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. So all those things are in place, and that's that inner tightest layer that we can make sure that we're providing that best level of safety and security. There are obviously, as Dr. Christian mentioned, several other things that we keep them close to the vest, because you can't share all of your emergency policies and procedures. Doing that compromises what you're trying to do. So there's a need for us to keep that closer to the vest so that we know what we're doing, our staff know what we're doing. And again, there's other things I can tell you that we've just entered into an agreement with the district attorney's office that they'll be doing assessments of all of our buildings again, where they come in and they look at every aspect of our building inside and out to tell us this is working, this isn't working, you should consider this, you should consider that. And then that all just continues on with Dr. Christian and I having a meeting with local chiefs of police saying, hey, what's out there? What do we need to be concerned about? We meet with the chiefs all the time. I met with the chief in White Marsh today, and we had conversations about some things today. And then they'll bring to our attention other safety and security measures that we can continue. We vet them, we look at them, we determine if it's right for the district. We meet with the chiefs on the backside of that, with the fire departments, with ambulance crews, with everyone to say, hey, will this work? Will this enhance our overall security and ultimately help us to deter, detect, and defend against any problems or threats to the students and the schools themselves?
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes.
So I haven't been through this, but does Raptor capture, like if there's a parent or guardian or someone that has a child here, but they have an unfavorable background? I know like the Homeland Security has different things that can capture, like if someone shouldn't be traveling, whether they bought a ticket or not. So if they have a good reason to be there, but their background, does it ping their background to say like, we don't want to, they have a legitimate reason to be here, but they need an escort or something along those lines?
So Raptor itself is designed to check visitors against Megan's Law in all 50 states. And that's what Raptor does. What Raptor allows us to do, and which we have done in some certain cases, if we have an issue with a regular visitor to the school who has created problems within the school, either through outbursts or violence or anything like that, we have the ability to add them into the Raptor system and flag them to say that if this person's in a building, we're going to need to escort them wherever they are. So it doesn't capture anything beyond Megan's Law, but we can add to the system.
So how would, on the back end of that, how would custodial issues be found? So if someone comes in and they're not supposed to have access to the child, they are a parent, but they are not supposed to have access to their child, how does that get applied?
So that's captured two different ways, and I'll defer to Karen because I think that's more under Karen first. We can again add things to Raptor that would flag us to that. But before it even gets to that point, there's measures in place from Karen's office.
There is a warning sign, if you will, that is when you look up a student empowered school, and it will say if there's a protection from abuse order, if there's a custody order. So we are alerted. And we do make sure that we adhere to that very closely.
You're alerted through Raptor or someone? I'm sorry, like,
No,
so a
we have
parent
to- we have
comes
to
in the
look it
door,
up
you
through
have to,
Power
look-
School.
so a parent
Through Power
comes in and they have to go into the Raptor system, it doesn't show up, so how would you know not to let that person, or not to release a child with that person?
If it has
What-
been
what-
brought to our attention that there is a protection from abuse order or a custody order that prohibits a parent from having access to their child, there is a little icon that appears in Power School and next to the student's name. And we click on that and it will alert us as to that.
The key factor is if we've been notified of the most recent custodial agreement. All too often, we deal with situations where we believe we have the most recent, but we're presented at usually dismissal time or arrival time with a new agreement that maybe just had been written the day before. And when we have that situation, we alert security to be there. Karen's office alerted, and the principals know when in doubt, you err on keeping the child with you until we get it sorted out. And so while emotions may run high, we err on the side of caution because they are dynamic documents.
Yeah, and I do speak with administrators and say, I would much rather say to someone, I am so sorry, we thought that this order was still in effect, we thought this custody order was still in effect, rather than say, I'm so sorry, we released your child to someone we shouldn't. And so we are, like Dr. Christian said, we do err on the side of safety, and that's my mantra. I'd rather get a slap on the hand from someone than lose sleep.
So tonight, the focus is the layers, as Tim mentioned, of all of our physical areas, the human element we provide with our multiple security officers who are in each building, many of whom are retired police officers, the hall monitors who monitor the doors at our middle school and high school, and then the close connection we have with our three police departments who are literally, if you look at the middle school, it's like having somebody in the building. They're right next door. White Marsh is on our campus 2 times a day at a minimum. I was a substitute principal one day at Conshohocken. We had a resident who was undergoing a medical procedure right at dismissal. It was not a parent. I called the police. I walked inside, asked everybody to wait to leave. I walked outside. There were already 2 officers and an ambulance on site, like within less than a minute. So I can't say enough the relationship we have with our community resources. We certainly, I wanted to go over this tonight. We talked about it with the board. I thought maybe we have some community members come out with questions. Certainly will be available. I totally understand the other half of this is what proactive supports do we have in place for identifying students in crisis mental health, and we can bring Felix back out. But I just wanted Tim to come out and talk about our physical plan. And Tim says it all the time, I'm gonna steal from him. It's all about the human element and having the human contact, greeting people at the door, which is critical. And those of you who've met our security force that work at our high school and middle school know they get it. They see the gray. They understand how to greet people. They understand how to greet students. They know people by name, which is very helpful. They go to away games when we have football games. They just know. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It never will be. But I think the layered approach is the best. And we will provide the board with any and all information you want regarding adding additional human resources, facility resources, things like that. We'll entertain all of that and provide you all the information you want. And in a future CRSL, we'll bring Felix out, Dr. Scherzinger, to talk about all the mental health supports that we provide too. Because we understand the proactive approach certainly helps and works in concert with our reactive approach.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question too, with respect to, after school events, basketball games, where we have students coming in from different areas. Not even necessarily the team that they're playing against, maybe just other people coming.
Just find it.
And we hear about incidents that happen in other stadiums with weapons or fights or whatever. So and I do recognize that at least football games I've gone to, there's a big police presence and things like that. Have we, I guess, you can't protect everybody against everything, I guess, is part of it. So what do we do other than the increased people presence for those events? Is there anything else that, I don't know, like.
So obviously, we staff our football games and our basketball games with our own staff in addition to law enforcement. And a lot of what we do is based upon what we'll hear that may have occurred in another district. Dr. Christian mentioned, our security guards are great talking to the kids, and we know the kids are all over social media. So it doesn't take but a minute that when there's something going on social media that may impact a basketball game and or a football game, we're able to add more personnel, move more personnel. We'll limit ticket sales so that we don't overstuff our buildings and our stadiums so that we can control the crowd a little bit better. We'll do things like close snack stands early. We won't allow outside vendors. So we'll do all these different things based upon the intelligence that we have that we can work with to make sure that we can control the crowd and control the scene a little bit better. We've gone so far, as Dr. Christian can attest to, last year, I think it was last year or the year before, we postponed the football game just because of the information that we had that we were not comfortable with. So we're willing to do any and all of those things to make sure that when this sporting event goes off, A, we have the resources we need to manage it properly, and B, we can ensure everybody's safety while it's
Have we ever attended a game in a different district where they have metal detectors or anything at the?
We have. It's not something we've pursued. Tim knows more about them than I do. I know from a logistical standpoint, they are very challenging to get everybody in and everybody out. I do know that one of the things that's very effective for us is if you leave one of our events to go into the parking lot, you've left the event. You're not coming back in. And that really handles a lot of problems because generally they're going out to do something that's not going to be beneficial if it's returned. Yeah.
In the last 2 years, we've changed some of our policies in terms of attending events and what you can bring in with you in terms of backpacks and open bottles and things like that. Those things aren't allowed anymore. And then like Dr. Christian said, if you leave, you're out. If you come to a football game, you'll see how that plays out at about the third quarter. Depending upon the score of the game, a lot of students will tend to try and leave at that point, and then they'll tend to try and come back. And it becomes a little bit of a back and forth with them. But there are signs everywhere. We point to the signs and we express to them, this is the way it works. So it's even after 2 years of doing this, it's still uncomfortable to some folks who think they can just come back in. But that's another thing that we'll do is we'll adjust our policies based upon what's going on. Again, all that is, it's input from the district attorney's office, it's input from other school districts. It's what we see going on is what causes us to make our adjustments.
Thanks.
And I just want to say thank you to your staff because I mean, like you're talking about sporting events. I mean, when we travel to other schools, I've seen it firsthand. Our staff is there. We have administrators there. We have security staff there. So our kids are, responsible to our own people. And I think that is really, really beneficial. And I've started to see, I think some other schools, I'd like to say they're following our lead and sending more people into our buildings as well. But I think it's really nice that we do that as a school.
It helps a lot.
And travel to away
It helps
games.
a lot.
Yeah, so.
I know Zero Eyes has caught a lot of prop guns and other
Yes.
things. How many incidents in your time here have we had with actual firearms on campus? I know there was at least one in a glove compartment like 10 years
Yes,
ago.
it was
It was what, 3 years ago?
It was either a contract
Sub.
aid or a sub or something like that. That's the only one that I'm aware of in the time that I've been here.
And it was a sub who parked illegally. It was blocking traffic for dismissal. And it wasn't Dean, it was somebody else.
Yeah,
I don't think Dean worked.
I think it might have been Chuck.
Yeah, it was Chuck, and he was just looking to move the car because it was blocking dismissal, and he saw a place, and we sent a letter home to families, and yeah, that was highly unusual. That subs did not continue to work in Colonial.
But thank you guys for all you do.
And I will tell you, the Zero Eyes technology is, while the human element is still number one, Zero Eyes is a close second in my opinion.
It's more eyes than all of my security guards combined. So it's definitely, you mentioned that Zero Eyes has caught 5 fake water pistols, thankfully. Some at the middle school, and we actually had, and I'm sure you were aware of it, we had 2 water pistols at the high school over the summer. So it's works great. It's fantastic. And I was a naysayer when I first looked at it, and they turned me around on it after I saw what they do and how they do it. So, and their family, we got a great working relationship with them. They're in our backyard. They're based in Conshohocken. So, it's great to work with somebody local. When I need them, because we have a concern or a problem, they're here in no time at all.
And when you get the alert, just so the board knows, Tim gets it, I get it, Joe gets it, the principal of that school, so we have like coverage, we have multiple people getting the message. But if somebody had like a super soaker, which is what they had, it does say, you see a picture immediately, you see the object, and it said identified as a replica or a toy. It's still, when you get it, it gets your attention right away. I'm calling him in 2 seconds. He's probably already, and it also it alerts the police right away too, right?
In a real scenario,
Oh,
we're
really?
talking about a super soaker, it won't notify police for that because they've already vetted that, so that way we don't bother the police with something like that. So yeah, it's a phone call or a text from Zero Eyes always kind of, raises the eyebrow for that second while you're looking to see what it is, so for sure.
How does our safety plan, I guess, extend to, we let a lot of outside groups use our campuses, Chestnut Hill, soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, all of those groups. What responsibilities do we have? What coverage do we have to protect? Like if they have 2 rival colleges are playing and they get unruly, how do we keep the community safe in those scenarios? And what's our role versus Chestnut Hills in this?
So for any rental, we offer the services of our security department to them. If they choose not to use that, the local police department has a list of all rentals and everybody that's using our facility at any given time. So if they wanted something beyond the use of our security department, they would have the ability to make contact with local law enforcement and have them present for their events.
And we have a nighttime person on.
During the week, we have 1 or 2, depending on the day of the week, security guards work until 10 o'clock at night. So they're available to respond to whatever the incident may be. All of those rentals have a cell phone number associated with that security guard. So during the week, they can call that security guard and he'll respond. That security guard knows that there are boundaries that we have because if it's a Chestnut Hill game, they're not technically our responsibility. So life safety becomes the overriding issue for us to get involved. Outside of that, it is a phone call to the local police department for their assistance.
Oh, I have some questions, unrelated to security, but from a safety standpoint, are all of our security guards and home monitors trained in CPR?
They are not.
We have the AEDs.
Yes, there's AEDs in the building. Obviously, there's nurses in the building. So,
Well, I'm saying like even for like the after school events too,
right,
so.
right. They are not.
And then with the AEDs, after hours, who would be trained to use them?
That's a great question. It would be up to the association who's renting the facility to have somebody trained. Where I volunteered, where I live, our organization worked with the district where I live to have access to an AED, a mobile one, as long as we promised to have somebody trained. But the district did not supply anybody to do it. They just supplied access to insurance.
Bless you. Along those lines, same lines, our basketball games, our football games, like on home field, do we have that ready, like,
Oh, yeah.
you hear students that just like collapse and
We
that's
have,
it, right?
we have
So-
two, minimum of 2 mobile ones, so the trainer's on the cart moving around, she has one with her at all times, and we have them identified in each building, so if we need it in a specific gym or facility, we have them nearby.
And the stadium too. Okay, thank you.
No, we don't.
And if it's on
EMT.
Victory, it would be the mobile cart.
Yes, the EMTs are always here at football.
EMT for football, but for soccer on Victory or lacrosse, it would be on the trainer's cart. We have, and then
Yes, and basketball is on the.
every summer, Tim and the trainer and RJ make sure that they're all updated, because the pads wear out and they can rot, and especially the ones that you use for outdoor, they take more abuse because of the air. So I think it's 2, might be 3, but I know we have them.
Yeah, each trainer has them. They have one in the middle school, they have a mobile one at the middle school, and of course in the building, the high school has, I wanna say 4 in the building, the middle school has 2 or 3, and each elementary school has 1.
I also like belabor this, but it just made me think of this too, in terms of, Mr. Harmer's point around the campuses being used, and obviously for the adult evening classes, they're used, so how does that work in terms of like safety for the adult evening classes and like if there's an emergency and things like that, I guess?
So again, there's a security guard, 1 or 2, depending on the day of the week, working throughout the district at night. And all the rentals have a phone number where they can contact the security guard or through the custodians in each building. Each building is staffed with at least 1, in most cases 2 custodians in the building. So the custodians would be the immediate response to whatever that organization would need. And then he can call security and or 911, whatever the need would be at that point.
So we communicate that to the,
Well, I was just gonna say, most of the instructors who have had concerns at night or things that need to be addressed have my cell phone number, and then I reach out to Drew or Tim or Joe or whomever, help me with the requests, so.
yeah, I was just thinking about that as a instructor, if I'm like, I'm doing karaoke with a group and something happens, like
Sure.
my instinct's obviously 911, I'm not gonna go wander the halls of high school
And
and find
that's
someone.
the best bet, is
Yeah.
just 911, because even though there's 1 or 2 security guards in the district, again, it's 1 out of 7 chance that they're in the building that you're in, so 911's always gonna get your quickest response.
Thank you. I mean, I know for me how I would handle it. I just want to make sure that like other, someone who might be new or a facilitator or instructor who isn't familiar, that they know what to do too.
Sure, we can work on some procedures for that, yeah.
Just some sort of communication like with your cell phone and or with security's number or whatever.
Any other questions? I'm gonna turn this next item over to Dr. Christian, who's going to discuss next year's first day of school.
So there is a draft calendar for 25-26 in board docs. Administration is proposing that we start before Labor Day, as we did this past year. The first day of school will be in late August, and that would be the 26th. And I would, since we did it this year, even though Labor Day is September 1st next year and is early, I would remind the board the following year it's September 7th. So I think we need to keep in the pattern of starting before Labor Day, considering the holidays we already have embedded in our calendar. And the goal is always to try to get completed by like that second Friday in June, which I think is appropriate. So it's our tech school starts early. Norristown and Upper Marion, with whom we share the tech school, start early. AP exams are earlier. So all those things being said, and I know Sue Moore is not happy with me right now. The only thing I'm advising the board right now is the administrative recommendation is to start the week before Labor Day again next year. And we'll have a formal board agenda item either later this month or in October, just so we give families enough notice. But please take a look at the calendar, and I'm so grateful that Karen allowed me to present this.
He begged me.
I do have a question on the calendar, the draft. After Christmas break, we're coming back for Friday, January 2nd. Is that productive for getting the kids back settled in and that Monday they can hit the ground running? Or is that kind of, we're coming back?
That's a great question, Rick, after the winter break. And what I would say is if we would extend the winter break through to the 5th, I would have school on August 29th to recapture that day.
Yeah.
I think a day in late August is more valuable than the January 2nd, or, that's a great point.
That's a good point.
Yes.
That's one of the awkward natures of the calendar, right?
Yeah.
And tonight's point was to emphasize first day, but that's an excellent point. But I think we could go that Friday, the 29th of August.
In that scenario, would actually Monday the 25th be?
I was just gonna say the same thing. Make it the 25th, like they
Because I
come
feel
in
like
on
it was
Monday.
You could.
Was Nick going back Monday this year and because.
Yeah, you could. You
Because
could.
then you said the 40 weekend.
They're both in play.
Summer back.
Yeah, 25th or 29th or both.
Yeah.
And then make the winter break encompass both weekends. Because I agree, coming back for one day is a bit of a challenge.
Nobody's gonna come back.
The other question would be happening on the 23rd.
Yeah.
If that is full day and then.
So remember,
captures some hours.
in the collective bargaining agreement, there are 3 half days. And so one of them has to be before Thanksgiving, one of them has to be before Memorial Day, and the third one, the superintendent's office, with the advice from the board, gets to choose. So we can kind of move that around, but logically, it's usually either before winter break or spring break, because there's really no other place to put it.
Okay, yeah, there's no great choice.
Yep. But we can, Linda and and Karen will work with the calendar, so. Is there any objection to the recommendation to start before Labor Day?
No.
Very good. So we'll tweak this. I won't, the only agenda item for the board to approve this month then will be just for the first day. Because we also have to share a draft calendar with CEA. And so we won't approve the official calendar probably till November or December.
So
But we
then
can
can we
approve
talk
it.
about the 25th, because if we're gonna
We
talk
will.
about approving the first day, we're gonna talk about that on, are we approving it this month?
We can, just the first day of school.
Right.
And then I have to give a draft calendar to CEA. They have 60 days to review by contract with the board. Generally, they don't take 60, they take less than half of that. So we'll have a draft calendar, Gail, probably by October, November. So we can talk about the August days, we have plenty of time to talk about that. I just want parents to know when the first day is gonna be.
Right, that's what I'm saying, so right now it's saying 26, but I think some
Oh,
of
I'm
us,
sorry.
some of us are saying to start on the 25th
Yeah.
instead of
We'll
the
throw
26th.
Rick under the bus for that.
And I'll be with you on it, because technically the next school will probably start on the 25th.
We can do the 25th.
Yeah, that's what I'm
totally
saying, like,
support that.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I misheard you.
No, that's fine.
Uh,
Because even if we say the 25th and then we slide it back to the 26th, I don't think that's as big a deal.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the board,
I'm on board with the
You're fine,
25th.
yeah.
Yeah.
great. So then the discussion would be, do we do the 29th or not? But we can decide that later. Great, thank you.
Any other questions? The next item on the agenda concerns an out-of-state college fair trip to the HBCU College Fair in Bloomington. I'm going to turn this over to Melissa.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. So on Friday, September 27th, we have an opportunity to have our junior and senior students at PW engage at the HBCU College Fair. HBCU stands for Historically Black College and University. And what's interesting about this event is that our graduating seniors are able to bring their SAT scores, ACT scores, and an unofficial transcript, because they have an opportunity for on-site applications, meeting with representatives from HBCUs across our nation, and not only that, on-site acceptance.
Wow.
What's really interesting about this event is since 2017, more than 6,000 acceptances have taken place. But what really is interesting is more than $47 million in scholarships have been afforded to students that participate. So this is an opportunity, again, that's happening at the end of this month. However, working closely with the counselors at PW, and more specifically, Ms. Lynch, we have an opportunity to expand this beyond this month and visit local HBCUs such as Cheyney and Lincoln University. And then Ms. Lynch shared in May how she flies into other universities to get a sense of what they have to offer and have an understanding of what the culture is at the universities that she visits. We also discuss opportunities in the fall to visit Atlanta, which is like the mecca of HBCUs, but then also exploring some HBCUs that may be a little further out for our students to do within a day trip, such as Morgan State, Howard University, Hampton University. So looking at those opportunities as well. So it's been a real pleasure working closely with our counselors at PW because we started working closely last school year with the Prize Initiative. So we're continuing to build that initiative and layer the work with the tour around HBCUs.
Is are mainly seniors being targeted as people, or are you just, if you want to go to get that experience of what others are doing? Like, so if you're a junior or a sophomore and you just kind of want to get a better feel of what my process is getting ready for college, is it too early to start? Or I'm just trying to figure out what the school is actually supporting, what you're actually advocating for.
Yes, and that's a great question. For the event this month, the HBCU College Fair in Wilmington, we are targeting juniors and seniors. In fact, it was recommended from the organization to focus on juniors and seniors because of the volume of students that they see at this event.
When
And they
did we
will
get,
take juniors applications.
we just got the notice for this.
We did, and it was a quick turnaround. We did just receive notice.
The one thing I would say about the HBCU is that it's like a misnomer that like everyone who attends, that you have to be Black. Because I know it was a very small number. So my son goes to Morehouse, and in his freshman class, which was like 700 and something people, there were 2 white guys. And parents, everybody was happy with this selection because it's a different learning environment. Maybe one that you never really get, but one that creates a more well-rounded experience when you go into the workforce. So I would encourage everyone to take a look.
Absolutely. In fact, there are probably more scholarships, right, for students that represent a different diversity at an
Right.
HBCU.
Because I think
So
everyone has
oftentimes that is a misnomer.
the EIB or DEI thing, right? So like, if you can get your student body to look closer to what's around, regardless.
In the agenda, in the letter, I guess it says that the details they're not actually there for us right now. Like, I was gonna ask like how.
Which details are? It says attached to this email is a copy of the trip request form, but board docs only has the original email.
So I guess my questions are around the logistics of it. So, are we providing transportation? How many, like, have we already, how are we're not gonna cap it, obviously, so there's a lot of students, like, will be prepared for
We'll provide.
all of that, the logistics.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we've had several meetings since this has been brought to our attention, and again, it's been a really quick turnaround. So we have shared messaging through Canvas.
Okay.
There are prompts all over the monitors in the high school. We have reached out to clubs, the various clubs throughout PW. And we have more than 20 pre-registrants right now.
Okay.
So again, it's been less than a week and we have more than 20 students that are juniors and seniors that have already signed up.
We just received the event announcement a week ago.
Wow. So so I'm just, and then that would count, it would be an
Excused absences,
absence and everything.
college visits or.
Right, so are there any sporting events that would clash with that?
There could be, and in that instance, we would have to come up with an alternative for the kids to visit, invite the schools to Plymouth White Marsh.
Right. It's an awesome opportunity. I mean,
Between Melissa and Beth Lynch, if we have kids who miss out due to co-curricular activities, sporting events, those types of things, we'll make sure we follow up with those families. Last year, we actually, it's a great event. Last year, we got about 8 days notice. And so we turned it around, but we only got a handful of kids there. This year we have about a month's notice or a little bit less. So we're hoping to have at least a dozen, if not more.
And then the cost for this, do we have the budget set aside for this kind of a trip? Okay. I was gonna say, or will the foundation potentially help out with the cost for that?
If the foundation would like to help out, they can, but we will have it covered.
Okay.
In the
We have
past,
bus
this trip,
drivers?
this,
What's that?
Do we have the bus
Well,
drivers?
that's another thing.
I do know that
Yeah, we had our first
they're
challenge
leaving
for
at
several
7:45 in the
times.
morning and they'll be back by 2:00 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, no, it's not, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I do remember those days, I apologize.
That's okay.
they
Yeah,
have this.
and we have a couple Wilmington grads right here sitting next to each other. Go
And Dr.
Wildcats.
Bacani is also attending.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But
We
he's
have
not a
this
Wilmington
event every
grad.
year. I think this is our second
He's
year
a
actually
woman,
doing it as a trip.
Yes.
Because we didn't do it as a trip before, but Ms. Mitch would notify students of the event. Like I took my daughter to the event when she was a student, when she was a senior. So this is our second year doing it as a trip, which is awesome. So I'm grateful that we're doing it now as a trip. I think more people then will have the ability to go because it's not, they're not having to do it on their own.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Any more questions for Melissa? Thank you. There are two policies that we're going to bring for administrative review tonight. The first one is policy 203.1, which is HIV infection. It is a change from the original policy, basically change in title. The other one was HIV/AIDS infection. And this is a required policy. It's an added policy, providing guided language throughout the policy for further clarity as to the content of the policy as a recommendation. There's added language specific to the infection, including disclosure of a student's condition and confidentiality in compliance with state law. So we're bringing this to the attention of the board for a first read. Questions about that? Okay. The second one is recommended, it's a new policy recommended by PSBA, withdrawal from school. And basically the gist of this policy is that we want to do whatever we can to discourage students from withdrawing from school. And so this just does address those efforts that we would take to discourage that from occurring. It's not anything new for us, however, it is a new policy that we are just putting on the record.
Does this withdraw from school altogether or just from our district?
Withdrawal from school.
At 8 years old?
No, 8 years old, compulsory education is between the ages of 8 and 17. So we do have students who, certainly they don't drop out at the age
Oh,
of
I see,
8.
got it. Okay. I'm sorry, I read that wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry. I'm like, isn't that
We encourage
Got it.
them to come to us
Got it.
at the age of 8.
Okay.
But we do have students who try to be beyond the age of the compulsory age of 17. And we do our very, very best to try to encourage them to stay and not withdraw beyond as soon as they are able to after the age of 17.
At the age of 17. Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
I thought the state changed it to 6. Yeah, I just looked it up. I think the change.
Yeah, and this is, again, the recent PSBA policy, so it hasn't caught up with the regulations. It's 6 and 18.
Do we wanna fix that in our
I'm going
contract?
to reach out to PSBA
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
and see what their recommended guidelines are for that, because they did not send us an updated one.
I mean, it used to be when you enroll your child, then it's.
Yep.
You had to enroll them by, and
By
you
age,
still do,
right.
you have to enroll, but now it is 6.
Right.
Age of 6. So I will reach out to them. Thank you, Chris.
Sorry, can I ask a question about the previous policy? In the previous policy, about the HIV policy, just as a larger So in this policy, are we saying they have to notify us if they're HIV positive, because that's the only way we can keep a safe environment for all other peers and staff?
I don't think we can require someone to,
So this policy is only if they do
if
notify
they
us.
do notify us, we cannot require them to notify. But we do need to keep them and others safe if they do notify us. And again, that was a policy anyway.
Right.
And procedure.
Think of larger infectious diseases as a whole, like even like COVID, like what is the responsibility to disclose to these staff and peers that we're putting in harm's way versus like just how does that versus right to privacy and like not.
Well, that's why you have universal precautions.
And I believe there is a policy for blood procedures. Any other questions? I'm going to turn it back to you for board comments, for public comment.
Is there any public comment?
Currently none at this time.
Is there any board comment? Hearing none, this meeting is dismissed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm not saying.
Throw it at someone.
See, got road Bob, so Mike turned on.
Yeah.
So is the rule like if you're 8 years old and taller than parents,